I am really, really proud of how I used my process and my business to get out of um, sort of what I call corporate drudgery. I don't think drudgery is I don't think corporate drudgery is the way everybody describes it. And I certainly don't think everybody needs to escape,
hmm
but I did.
hmm
And I sat down and I said, I need to, like, work's not working for me. There's something, whatever's in my psychology, like, this isn't working. And I had three kids
hmm
and a wife who works and all this stuff. Right. And like, how do I engineer this path out? How do I break work and make it work for me? And I put a lot of thought into it. I took my time and I developed a plan. And I'm really, really proud that I executed on that plan. And now I'm just like, I'm loving life.
Yeah.
I'm not a trillionaire.
hmm
I'm not, like, those aren't things that I care about. I've figured out like what I want in my life to look like, and I built work around it.
I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school. Hey there, I'm Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School, a podcast where we discuss business ownership lessons that are learned through experience, not in a classroom or a seminar. Today, I get to interview Michael Gardon, the CEO of Rejoin Media. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I know we're going to learn some very valuable business ownership lessons. Michael, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here with me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Yeah. So let's just get started. Tell us about your role in Rejoin Media and just a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So I always tell people I'm that guy that never knew what he wanted to do when he grows up and basically still doesn't. I think of myself as this person who has come to explore and figure out and sort of wayfind his path in the world, which I think a lot of people uh, have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And through a lot of introspection, trial and error, I've come to be the CEO, start and be the CEO of Rejoin Media, which is basically a mini. I talk about it as a mini private equity firm for digital brands and businesses. So I had some experience in content marketing and SEO back in the day, and I just started acquiring small websites and small
Mm-hmm.
digital businesses that I thought I could kind of grow on that same model.
Mm-hmm.
And I spend most of my time on one of our properties, which is careercloud.com, because I've come to really enjoy this idea of talking to people about their career journeys. And so I host a podcast there, which is called The Break, and also a weekly newsletter. And basically, Career Cloud and our newsletter and podcast is all driven at helping people figure out how to build the career of their dreams.
Cool. Yeah. And the career path is all over the place, especially I find for entrepreneurs. My career path is one for the storybooks. I think I started out as an accountant, CPA, then started working in small businesses, then lost my job and started a marketing agency. And now I'm doing podcasting and speaking and coaching while I'm still, managing and running a marketing agency, which is it's challenging, but it's also a lot of fun. But I bet you get into some really interesting conversations about career paths and that work.
Yeah, and I think the biggest I do, and I've learned, I've talked to some unbelievable people who have
Mm-hmm.
made, crazy career pivots and journeys. I've done the same. I've changed my career like six or seven different times, in very disparate uh, topic areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just like you. So I get to talk to people, and the coolest thing is that's normal,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, people think about there's something wrong with me if I can't figure
Mm-hmm.
this out, right? I'm 41, and I'll tell people I still don't think I have my career figured out. I love what I'm doing right now, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably be doing something different in 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, and that's normal. What I'm trying to do is speed that up for people
Mm.
and
Mhm.
and give them sort of a map to figure things out and make decisions quicker and earlier to get on that path of fulfillment much sooner.
It's all about making progress and not worrying about being perfect in your progress. And I know that it took me about a decade to write a book and probably about 5 years to actually start doing this thing that I'm doing now that I always knew I wanted to do, but it just took me forever to pull the trigger and turn it into something uh, where I can, be an entrepreneur and make a living at it. So I think that's fantastic. So Michael, what is your favorite part about being a business owner?
My favorite part is just being able to being in control.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've worked, I have worked, for corporate America, and I've done a bunch of different things.
Mm-hmm.
I was just always a person that if I was told to do something, I didn't. It doesn't matter what it was. If I was told to do something, I didn't want to do it.
Uh-huh.
But if I could choose, then I had this frame where I get to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so as a business owner, I get to do a lot of things, and I can still be super creative and experiment
Mm-hmm.
and not be a order giver, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
with my team, I'm not an order giver. I'm a let's go learn about that thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my favorite. That's what I was lacking in a job, was just this creative capacity.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I like right now about working for myself.
What happened? I'm really curious to hear your answer about this. What would happen when you were told you couldn't do something, or maybe even today when you're told you can't do something or you think something's unrealistic to do? How do you react to that?
You know, I can't I don't think that this is good, and I can't explain it, but I'll just be really honest. Like, it just my energy level just goes down. It goes back to like being a kid,
Okay.
where like my mom would be like, "Hey, I have a job for you," right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
How about I'll do that? I have
Mm-hmm.
no problem doing the thing, but on my timetable, or at least like give me control over how it gets done."
Mm-hmm.
So my reaction as an adult is, if I have a task to do, and goes back to working in corporate America, like I have a task to do, cool.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm going to also be told how to do that,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I have the really big problem. And that shows up in my marriage also, in my family life,
Yeah.
because like I have 3 kids, and we have a constant back and forth between my wife and I of like, okay, I've got the kids today, or I've got
Mm-hmm.
I got to take them after school, let's say, or something like that, and I we're gonna go have fun, and we're gonna do it, dad's way. You can go do your girl thing, or you can go, just relax,
Mm-hmm.
don't worry about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But don't
Mm-hmm.
don't be telling me how to take care of them when you're not around. So it's just sort of this, I don't know if it's just the misfit in me or what, but that I just always had a really hard time with that. And I think for a long time, and you can probably relate to this, you push that down
Mm-hmm.
and you think that that's a bug in your system.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start to like mature and lean into, well, you flip that script, like, well,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, what is that good for? What's the other side of that? What's the balance to it? Then you start tapping into like using that bug as a feature in your
Mm-hmm.
world.
Yeah. So what happens when you think you have a really good idea about something and you really want to pursue it, but somebody, whether it's, in your personal life, your spouse or your team or a business coach or anybody says, I don't really think this is a good idea, but you like feel it in your gut that it's a good idea. Do you still go for it, or do you like, how do you manage that kind of feedback? Because I think there's a flip side to it as well. That for me personally, when somebody tells me I can't do something and I think I can do it and I think it's a good idea, it motivates me to keep pushing forward with it. So I'm just curious to your answer to that question.
So I have a couple principles that around this actually. So one is, I just fun. This goes back to my first job I really ever had was as a futures trader. Like I was actually making buy and sell decisions on commodities and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I learned a lot about risk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I basically have this belief that we literally know nothing for sure. So just because I have a feeling in my gut, doesn't mean I know and I'm 100% certain that that's going to work out. So my response then is, okay, well, what do we need to see to believe that it's going to
Mm-hmm.
work? And that question leads to what is the next experiment or tiny step we can take to get more signal that we're on the right path. And so if there's somebody that's a blocker, I say, well, what's the smallest thing we could do to just see?
Mm.
And I try to instill that experimental mindset in people that are around me because I think it's really lacking. We as a society, like, we are taught to think and then execute.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the world works that way.
No.
So I go into a situation knowing full well that I could be completely wrong. My gut could be lying to me. But it's about like taking the steps and the actions to see and being clear about what we need to understand to see if this is actually working or not. And then at the end of the day, you throw your hands up and you say, okay, that was a mistake. I lost some money there. I lost some time. And you just sort of wipe the slate and
Mm-hmm.
go on. And you have to set up your individual person, and you have to set up your, business or your entity or your team to be okay with that.
Yeah. That's a really great piece of advice. What's the smallest, indicator you need to see to continue pursuing this? Because I'm actually struggling with this a little bit right now, and I'm just certain that I've found a path. And we've tried a lot of things that haven't worked, but we've had indicators of other things that might work. And I think the path that I'm pretty much hell bent on taking right now is the path that I want to take. But I have a couple of people who are like, I don't know, like, I don't know if that's going to work. I think you need to focus on this more and that more. Um, so yeah, it's really interesting. Sometimes you got to listen to your gut. That is a great piece of advice to get buy-in on your gut instinct, but also keep you in check because as entrepreneurs and business owners, I mean, we can chase squirrels and we can go down rabbit holes and be down a rabbit hole for 2 years before we realize whatever we're playing around with isn't going to work out. So that's a fantastic piece of advice, Michael.
Yeah. The opposite side of it, of this sort of experimental mindset, is that rabbit hole that you just talked
Mm-hmm.
about.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to um, you have to deal with that through constraints. And one of the ways that you put constraints on is like, okay, I only have three options,
Mm-hmm.
like no more than three options, right? So if I think this middle path is my gut path, and I think that is the highest odds in my brain, what are two other options that I can compare against, and we can maybe simultaneously run at the same time, and then compare against those. So I call this like an options portfolio.
Mm.
And I think as a business owner, you have to constrain your options and you have to give space for your options at the same time. So you need a system to allow for that experimentation, but then quickly call what's not working and do more of what is working. And so I just call that an options portfolio. And I think you can run that like as an individual as well by just thinking about, well, what are the things or the activities that I can do to get the more information that I need.
Hey, this is Julie B, and you're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School. I'm here with Michael Gardon, and he literally just gave me a master class in how to both balance pursuing rabbit holes and putting constraints around it so that I don't get totally off the rails with my ideas, which is something I think most business owners need to address. So thank you for that, Michael. I literally just took a bunch of notes about that. But I want to circle back to something you said a little bit earlier, because one thing that as business owners and entrepreneurs, we learn, I think, pretty quickly is that you can't do it alone. And you mentioned that when it comes to working with your team, you're not an order giver. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about how you approach working with the team and delegating and doing all of that, because some business owners have a hard time letting go of things, but if you want to grow, you have to eventually delegate. So could you talk a little bit about how you approach that part of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I had to learn some of this was in the introspection and putting myself through my own uh, coaching program, basically, where I
Mm-hmm.
where I I help clients like really understand their advantages, like overall advantages. And so I was doing this with myself, and I don't have to, we can get into that if you want, but we don't have to. But I was putting myself through this process. And I'm like, well, what are the things that I am good at that give me energy, and what do I not simultaneously like invert this? Like, what am I not good at, and all this kind of stuff, and really documented this out. And, there's if you're on Twitter or on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people talking about solopreneurship, right? This idea of building a business
Mm-hmm.
by yourself to
Mm-hmm.
maximize for freedom and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that because I am like I need to have a bunch of things going on creatively. I need to be the quick start.
Mm-hmm.
And then the operational day to day, let's put this into a system, like I am not good at.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, I have to, it goes back to the have tos, right? Like I have to do this, so I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's not a choice for me. So I have to have people, and I want a small team, but I want people that are good at that and
Mm-hmm.
want to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what I try to do is I'm a quick start on a project, and then I'm a handoff person, and I'm a coach at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I rediscovered my love for coaching, like for sports and coaching with my kids and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. So what I try to do is say, hey, like the expectation of you is you are now the person that has to learn this stuff, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to help you figure out, like, in any way that I can, and here to support. But you are now the person experimenting and learning, and I give a lot of rope there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking to plug in a subject matter expert. I hire
Mm-hmm.
generalists, people that want to learn, people that are inquisitive, and people that are um, upfront and will call me on stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a horizontal guy
Mm-hmm.
and I need to be reined in sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I view myself as a coach, not a boss.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you hire people who are coachable. That's probably a very high.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you make sure when you're going through the process of bringing in a team member, how do you make sure that they are going to be that type of person? Sometimes it's hard to do you use any like assessments or any is it your gut instinct? Like how do you make sure the person you're bringing in is going to be that type of person?
Yeah. So we're a really small team. We have
Mm-hmm.
like 5 people, and that's by design. Like I really
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have a giant team.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of just personal interaction and gut around
Mm-hmm.
it. But I think, like, I really don't use assessments other
Mm-hmm.
than we do a lot when I'm interacting with somebody over
Mm-hmm.
email, like in the initial phases. And I'm really looking at their writing skills,
Mm-hmm.
because we're a remote team.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ability to write and have all of the right information easily accessible, like, this is a really big skill. So that's like a skill
Mm-hmm.
component. But when we talk and we have like an interview or a coffee conversation, it's just really about, I get into the background, and I'm trying to listen for learning. Like, how did they
Got it.
approach their past job, and how did they go about learning something? I love when people have side hustles or other projects they're working on. Like, that's a plus for me,
Mm.
because that shows they're out there taking action and learning
Mm-hmm.
off the job skills that they can bring into the job.
That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah, I could see where that would, when you're looking for that type of person, how them having a side hustle or, even a couple of side hustles, that is force, they have to learn how to do certain things. That's really, yeah, that's a really great indicator and qualifier for you. So, one question I really love to ask business owners, Michael, is what has been your biggest success thus far in business ownership?
I'll talk about what I'm most proud of, I guess.
Yeah.
So I am really, really proud of how I used my process and my business to get out of um, sort of what I call corporate drudgery. I don't think drudgery is, it's I don't think corporate drudgery is the way everybody describes it. And I certainly don't think everybody needs to escape,
Mm-hmm.
but I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down and I said, I need to, like, work's not working for me. There's something, whatever's in my psychology, like, this isn't working. And I had 3 kids
Mm-hmm.
and a wife who works, and I had all this stuff, right? And I'm like, how do I engineer this path out? How do I break work and make it work for me? And I put a lot of thought into it. I took my time and I developed a plan. And I'm really, really proud that I executed on that plan. And now I'm just like, I'm loving life.
Yeah.
I'm not a trillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, like, those aren't things that I care about. I've figured out, like, what I want in my life to look like, and I
Mm-hmm.
built work around it.
Mm-hmm.
And my business has been my vehicle to do that.
Yeah. And is that how is being able to make work basically work for your life and being able to build your life around it? Is that part of how you define success for yourself?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, right. Success is different for everybody. But I looked at life and I was like, it doesn't make sense to spend all of this time. I have no problem with people chasing money
Mm-hmm.
to have a good life.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're here once, like, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can't enjoy it along the way, like, every moment that you're doing it, then it's not successful. So I think, like, success is about balance for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
about riding, like, the middle of the wave, and um, you know, being like I think about a CrossFit athlete. Like, I'm there for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm killing it at work. I'm creative. I have energy. Work gives me energy.
Mm-hmm.
So then I bring that energy home with my family, and we have enough money to go do the things that we want to do and give my kids these great
Mm-hmm.
experiences and enjoy things. But it's all this balance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out of whack in any one area. That's
Mm-hmm.
how I think I look at success.
You're listening to They Don't Teach This in Business School, and I'm the host, Julie B. I'm here with Michael Gardon today, and we're having a really great conversation. So, Michael, we were just talking about success and your biggest wins as a business owner. One of the questions I like to ask on the flip side of that is, are there any mistakes that you have made in business ownership that, if you had the chance, you would go back and correct them?
I mean, I made a billion mistakes. Yeah. I think one of them is, in a general sense, like, so I have this experimental mindset, which I've kind of talked about,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a slow decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
I, and I think that works really well for big decisions, but I think I have been slow to act in smaller decisions where we could
Mm-hmm.
speed things up. I don't have, like, a great example of this. It's
Yeah.
more of, like, a general thing that I've learned about myself probably within the last 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that's a really an area for improvement for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Because I think we've just been, we could probably, our progress could probably be ahead of where they are. I guess the example
Mm-hmm.
is I'm trying to build a course and a
Mm-hmm.
coaching business.
Mm-hmm.
And, number one, this has been in me for years and I've done nothing about it. I know you kind of said the same
Mm-hmm.
with one of your, with some of your career
Mm-hmm.
transitions. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
not listening to that
Mm-hmm.
is a slow decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I'm throwing out ideas and coming on podcasts and I'm getting great reception, and people saying, wow, like, I read what I'm saying resonates, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still looking for more information.
Mm-hmm.
And I should probably have all of this stuff, like, out the door and ready to go already, but I don't.
Well, and I think to your point though, there is a time to be deliberate and intentional and take a lot of time and research time to make a decision. And then there's a time to just try something. And sometimes it's hard to it's easy when you're looking backwards at it, like, oh man, I should have started that 5 years before I did, or 2 years before I did, or whatever the time frame is. But when you're in it, it's really tough sometimes to know which one you're doing. And I don't have an answer for it. The way that I now have an awareness to this is if I am adding options to something that is ready to go or something that's almost ready to go, then I know I'm basically procrastinating out of fear and I just need to pull the trigger. I mean, I have a coaching program that's a perfect example right now that I've been talking about for 2 months, and I've got everything I need and I just need to go talk about it, but I'm afraid it's not going to sell. So, I'm like, okay, well, let me tweak this one part of it. Let me tweak that one part of it, but I know it's ready to go. So, but then there are times like when you're making big changes where it is important to be deliberate, and intentional and take the time with it. So I don't know if that helps you, but when I'm adding more options to something that is by all definitions just ready to be tested, then I know that's when I'm like, I'm procrastinating for some reason. I just need to pull the trigger and
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, that like inner fear is
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. I think one of the ways I like what you said about adding options, like noticing that you're adding options, noticing that you're making edits that don't really need to be made or what,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. A lot of times you just need that outside perspective. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can't see that it's ready to go. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of things like one is a friend of mine said, the world is going to be better with your stuff released out there than it
Mm-hmm.
is now.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that kind of lowers the bar, which is nice. Like, yeah, that's true. I can
Mm-hmm.
continue to update it and make it better as we
Mm-hmm.
go,
Mm-hmm.
but like there's enough there. There's enough people telling me to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Just listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not there just cheerleading you to try to
Mm-hmm.
get you to do something that isn't really ready.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, they're being truthful. Like just go for it. And I think we build up the stakes in our mind a lot more than they are. Like as a general rule, the stakes are much much lower than we think they are for doing something new, trying something. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even people who are paralyzed by like writing something on LinkedIn, it's like nobody's really listening. Nobody's When you
Yeah.
really look behind the numbers,
Yeah.
not that many people are going to see it
Mm-hmm.
first. So if it sucks, you just move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting world we live in because there are a lot of the offerings that we build or we do or the services we provide, they can be edited kind of on the fly. Even if you're, a maker and you make products, I mean that's a little bit harder to change on the fly, but you can still, change your product model as you go. So I don't think the importance of action and progress cannot be overstated because I see so many business owners just get stuck. And I've been one of them myself many times, get stuck in this tinkering and puttering with one idea when the idea is ready to go. You just need to go out there and talk about it and get it out there in the world. And that question of will it be better? Will the world be better with it out there than it is right now? Yeah, probably. So just do it.
Yeah.
Uh, So listen, Michael, as we are wrapping up, I've had a great conversation with you today. But as we're wrapping up, I always ask business owners this question: if you were going to teach a class to future entrepreneurs or people who are interested in becoming business owners, what do you think is the main lesson you would want them to learn in your class?
So I don't know what I would title it, but every decision. So you're a resource allocator as a
Mm-hmm.
business owner. You're allocating money, time, your time, other people's time. And those are all sort of finite resources.
Mm-hmm.
So viewing every decision you make as an investment decision, um, and thinking, so I would basically take a bunch of sort of investing principles around, um, even like
Mm-hmm.
efficient market hypothesis and all of these
Yeah.
portfolio and all of these types of things, like options, like where there's a financial thing, there's a
Mm-hmm.
financial basis for options, like what that actually is, the cost and the benefit, um,
Mm-hmm.
and teaching them how to view every decision they make as an investment, because that's ultimately those series of choices are ultimately what's going to produce success. And if you're able to consistently increase your hit rate and make good decisions on those and see return, you're going to be in a much better place.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot and tips that I'm just going to take out and apply right out of this, right out of the gate. I just want to thank you for being on the podcast again. It's been a real pleasure.
I loved it too. Thank you so much for having me. Hope your audience can take something away from it, and really appreciate the opportunity.
And that is a wrap on this episode, but please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform so that you don't miss out on any future great conversations like this one. I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school. Even if you're, a maker and you make products, I mean, that's a little bit harder to change on the fly, but you can still, change your product model as you go. So I don't think the importance of action and progress cannot be overstated, because I see so many business owners just get stuck. And I've been one of them myself many times, get stuck in this tinkering and puttering with one idea when the idea is ready to go. You just need to go out there and talk about it and get it out there in the world. And that question of, will it be better? Will the world be better with it out there than it is right now? Yeah, probably. So just do it.
Yeah.
So listen, Michael, as we are wrapping up, I've had a great conversation with you today. But as we're wrapping up, I always ask business owners this question: if you were going to teach a class to future entrepreneurs or people who are interested in becoming business owners, what do you think is the main lesson you would want them to learn in your class?
So, I don't know what I would title it, but every decision. So you're a resource allocator as a business owner. You're allocating money, time, your time, other people's time. And those are all sort of finite resources. So viewing every decision you make as an investment decision, and thinking, so I would basically take a bunch of sort of investing principles around, even like efficient market hypothesis and all of these, portfolio and all of these types of things, like options, like where there's a financial thing, there's a financial basis for options, like what that actually is, the cost and the benefit, and teaching them how to view every decision they make as an investment, because that's ultimately, those series of choices are ultimately what's going to produce success. And if you're able to consistently increase your hit rate and make good decisions on those and see return, you're going to be in a much better place.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, I have so enjoyed this conversation. I've learned a lot, and tips that I'm just going to take out and apply right out of the gate. I just want to thank you for being on the podcast again. It's been a real pleasure.
I loved it too. Thank you so much for having me. Hope your audience can take something away from it, and really appreciate the opportunity.
And that is a wrap on this episode, but please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform so that you don't miss out on any future great conversations like this one. I'm Julie B, and they don't teach this in business school.